Last night was quite cold and we got some fresh powdery snow down. The wildlife is starting to really make an uptick in their presence in the landscape here as they get a little bit more desperate for food and resources. And so it's a chance for me to make some observations about what's going on and what we might need to do to intervene to protect some of our nursery stock and some of our young plantings. Specifically, I'd like to focus on rabbits today because they're the major pressure, and think through some ways that we can help let them live and then also have our needs met. So as a permaculture nursery, we grow a tremendous number of hardy perennial plants that make food and medicine, and overall they're very resilient plants. We depend on those plants for our income, which is tricky. So if they die from disease or other pressures, that's a financial hit for us. That's kind of hard. The plants generally don't die from disease or environmental pressures. What sometimes can happen is they can get really hit hard by wildlife that are desperate in the winter. And so what I'm looking at here are tracks I know that are fresh as of last night. These are all rabbit tracks. And so the wild rabbits that are out in the landscape beyond our fence line are coming through the fence and trying to find nourishment. It's a tricky position. If we're a permaculture nursery, 100%, we can't just go out and say, oh, well, we're going to just poison them or trap them, get rid of them somehow. They're wild beings. They deserve to be in this landscape, but it's incompatible with them eating our plants. Let's take a look a little bit more in detail. It's a little hard to see and subtle. You can see my fingers. These aren't that big. This was 20 to 25 Siberian apricots that were about that tall last night. And you can see the activity all around in the snow, these footprints. The rabbits found these and zipped them flush close to snow line. Here's the good news. Well, maybe good news. By being cut back in the dormant time of year, these first year apricot seedlings have not been killed. They've simply been pruned back. They're certainly not sellable now, so any hopes that I had of selling these in the spring are gone. But they're pruned back, and so next year they'll regrow with a higher ratio of root system to top, and they'll actually grow pretty nicely and next year be sellable plants. So now that these have been pruned down, I don't have to protect them because it's not as though the rabbits are going to dig them up. They might trim them the rest of the way, but it's a bummer. The rabbits got a really nice meal, but the good news is that the plants haven't been killed. It's just setting them back a year from when I can sell them. And that's become a major strategy for us overall, is knowing that there are rabbits, there are deer, there are voles, there are all these variables. We set our inventory at around 20% of what we think we have, so that if we do have catastrophic crop failure because of creatures that are trying to make a living and survive a cold night, it doesn't knock down our bottom line. But you can see here we've got some honey locusts. These are thornless honey locusts, which is a major target for rabbits in the winter. They love to take the tops off. These are some nice tall ones. Simply dropping a 2x4 inch welded wire ring around them seems to help so far in keeping rabbits out of those spaces. What's been interesting to learn over time, and I wouldn't believe it unless I saw it with my own eyes, it seems almost like an optical illusion. A full-size adult rabbit can actually get through a 2x4 inch welded wire fence. I didn't believe that was possible. This fencing, however, is completely rabbit porous. And you say, well, wait a minute, you just said you can put a ring around plants and it keeps the rabbits out. So far, what I've observed is when it's in a ring, a small diameter ring, the rabbits will not try to get through it. If it's a straight fence and it's a straight run, they'll just push right through. And so we're learning the hard way that this whole nice fence that for the most part keeps deer out fully is just about completely rabbit porous, especially in the winter months when the vegetation is down and it's a very clear line of sight for them. So we just can assume rabbits will come and go as they please indefinitely from now on. Yay. So you say, well, how do you know it's rabbits and not something else? Well, we know it's not deer because if it were deer, the footprints in here would be way larger. And also the way deer chew on plants is it really looks like someone took, let's say, imagine this apple. If this was deer browsed, the top would look like somebody took a pair of pliers and just crushed it for a while. It's very frayed and chewed up on the tip. When rabbits do their work, it really looks like pruners have come in. Very sharp little angular cuts. These are rabbit prunings. Now, interesting to continue that thought, this is an apple that was grafted last year. I've learned to not be too concerned when rabbits do this sort of browsing in the winter. What they're tending to do is actually prune off branches that I may very well prune off anyway, because I'd like this apple to become a taller, straighter tree. If they get desperate enough, they'll start chewing the bark, but by and large, when a tree becomes at least pinky thick or finger thickness, it's really only the lateral branches that they go after. Another key way that I know it's rabbits and not other creatures is the deposits on the snow. Little spherical pellets of poop that are light tan or like a tan color. So they're fertilizing as they go. There's that, but they're definitely putting a hit on our baseline here. So one strategy could be, in this case, I had this cage set up that was meant to occlude chipmunks from a growing bed. And in the winter, if it fits over a bed, it works pretty nicely. This, I can feel pretty confident rabbits will truly not chew anything in here. All the little seedlings in here are Amorpha fruticosa, or river locust, which we just started offering through the website. The only stock I have is this block here and what's inside of that 2x4 inch welded wire ring over there. So if they were to chew the tops off of all these, that would be a significant financial loss because we'd have to refund people. So we're dropping these cages. If we haven't sold a plant in advance and the rabbits damage it, well then so be it. We'll sell it in the future and it'll just be a more robust plant later on. We're dealing with perennials, and it's important to remember when you're dealing with long-term perennial systems, it is a long-term game. So if it doesn't work out this year, you can give it time to work out next year, and that's okay. And this to me is a pretty clear example of that idea again. 2x4 inch welded wire does not work to keep out adult rabbits when it's a straight line and a straight run. In a small circle like this, you can see rabbit prints very clearly moving around this, and I know that they would like to chew those stems if they can get to them, but here they are on the other side. So these small compost rings, these very easy low-cost rings, they can be made out of old material, pretty effective in a pinch to drop around a group of plants. And here are some plants that are second or third year that I healed in, just basically buried them for the winter. I'm not too worried about them because again, their gauge is getting thick enough that the rabbits don't seem to go after them too much. I'd like to share some notes here on what are the plants that we see rabbits have absolutely no interest in. Never once have we seen rabbit browse on gooseberry. In fact, any of the really thorny plants, I think their mouths are tender enough. So if you have insane rabbit pressure, or if you really just don't want to intervene with rabbit pressure, the spiky friends, pretty nice. So your blackcap raspberries, even raspberries to some extent, but definitely gooseberries, and definitely the really thorny blackberries seem to do a great job at just deflecting rabbits purely because of their physical layout. Here you see rabbit tracks moving through, and this is a little thicket of younger elderberries. I've yet to ever see, maybe folks out there have seen, but I've never seen rabbits chewing elderberry stems. This in particular is a variety called Marge, which has European genetics, and European elders tend to have a funkier smell. But overall, it seems like elder is pretty safe from rabbit browse. It's funny I say that, and then I look just a few feet over. Here's pure American elder, which does not have the same amount of intensity of aroma. And I can see lots of rabbit tracks and some poop, a little bit of nibbling, but they didn't hit it too hard. Elder's not their favorite. American elder, they seem to nibble a bit. European elder, they leave alone. Black currant, I've never ever seen rabbits chew on. Once in a great blue moon, I see some deer browse on the very top of a black currant, but these are just about as close to immune to browse from deer and rabbits as any plant I've ever met. And now that I've said such a strong statement, I bet tomorrow they eat them all. But I actually don't think they will. Similar enough to black currant is the yastaberry, the hybrid between the black currant and gooseberry. It seems to be another one that's close to immune to browse from rabbits. We're learning as we go, but it's been a nice surprise that our little thicket here of Schisandra vines, which are certainly the right size and shape to be very appealing to rabbits if they wanted to chew them, they don't seem to touch them at all. I'm wondering if the very intense aromatic nature of these vines helps protect them from rabbit browse. Here's some seedling pawpaws. By and large, I don't think I've ever seen pawpaws being chewed by rabbits. Definitely could be something where it's just luck, but it seems like it's a pattern. Pawpaws do not seem to be appealing to rabbits. Black currants, like I said, pretty much immune, but red currants, pink and white currants, it seems like any ribes. Really not exciting for rabbits. It's nice to know we've got some characters we can just plop into the landscape and not have to worry about. Some extreme favorites of rabbits on the other end of the spectrum. Here we've got some wild plums, smaller diameter, chewed really heavily. Rabbits love any of the wild plums. They seem to love cultivar pears. The wild pear, that spikier friend in the background, so far has been pretty safe, but I would suspect the rabbits would get to them sooner than later. And the apple is definitely a seriously legit food for rabbits, and also little cherries. Really, it's your fruit, young fruit trees. You kind of have to put a cage around them in the winter months to protect from rabbits. At least 2 feet tall if you're in a cold climate like ours. When we pair aromatic support plants to these plants, it helps all through the growing season. So if there were mints in here and sweet Sicily and rhubarb, horseradish, all these potent plants, that works for 6 to 8 months out of the year, but it's the winter when the rabbits are desperate that they really come in and zero these plants out if they can. What sort of techniques do you folks use to keep rabbits away from key plants that you want to get established? Once they're full size, once they start growing, it's really a non-issue. It's a very early young plants, and as a nursery, it's a pretty major part of the plant beings that are in our landscape. Like I said, the idea of trapping them or poisoning them, completely off the table. I may consider hunting a bit, but it might be nice just to see if we can figure out how do we deflect them from just some key spots and let them eat other areas. What are your notes on this? What observations have you made this winter of how rabbits or other wild creatures work in your landscape? How do we go deeper into this idea of the wild creatures moving through our landscape? We've got our ideas of what we want to happen. They've got theirs. What do we do to deepen our designs and make them more resilient so that those wild creatures can raise their families, do what they need to do, but not hurt our ability to feed our families or make the money that we need to make in society? It's complex questions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching this long, rambling video of sticks in the snow with little bite marks on them and the occasional sphere of poop. Thanks for watching.